Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this general government meeting. And maybe we have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Dennehy, absent. Councilmember Maloney,
Here.
Councilmember Schmischer,
Here.
Councilmember Stein,
Here.
Councilmember Tracy,
Here.
Councilmember Worthington,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick,
Here.
Mayor Troutman.
Here.
And tonight we're hearing about engineering specifications. Oh, boy. And this is you're welcome to start, Mr. City Administrator, but I have a hunch this is going to be the Leo and Ted show.
Yes, sir, it is.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor, members of council. We'll try to be quick tonight. We're here today to talk briefly about an update to our city standard specifications. These are done periodically, and it's really the basis for all of our capital work that we do, and any of the work that occurs in the public right-of-way is where these come into play. So it's been quite some time since they've been updated. It is a document that lives almost entirely in the engineering department. It has traditionally been approved by council through resolution, though in talking with our attorneys, that's not necessarily a charter requirement if we want to consider alternatives to updating this going forward. Last major update was in 2017 with minor revisions in 2019, and we're hoping to come back in early 2025 with the final version of this. So tonight is really just going over some of the major changes that we'd like to see, get your thoughts on that, and help us finish out our red lines and work towards something next year. I won't spend a lot of time on this. These are the summary of the major changes that we wanted to talk briefly about today. So if anyone has a question or wants to stop me at any point, just get my attention. Otherwise, I will roll on. First major change we're looking at would be updates to fees. The fees were last updated in 2016, which is even prior to the last version. So those are about 8 years, going on 9 years old at this point. CPI during that time is roughly 40%. I don't know that we've necessarily done all the work yet to establish what the right fees are. That's something we still have to work through with our attorneys to not necessarily just adjust for inflation, but make sure what we're charging is, the right amount. These are essentially fees that are for a permit fee to cut the street, and then fees for inspections that we provide if our inspectors have to go out and check density or check concrete before you pour sidewalk, things like that. The other place that these fees come into play is for sidewalk reimbursements. The fees that we use to reimburse residents for sidewalk replacement are established in the standard specs. So we have the program that is geared towards a 50-50 reimbursement. Just those 8 years since the fees have been updated makes that more like a 30% reimbursement at this point. So getting those updated will make that program a little more incentivized and attractive for our residents to take advantage of in the future. We do have just one new fee that we're looking at would potentially be a fee for longitudinal utility installations. This would be something that we're seeing in other communities as fiber optic becomes more in tune and more available in the direct-to-home market. We'll have fiber companies that are maybe not necessarily working for us out installing miles and miles of fiber within the public right-of-way that we'll be needing to review locations and potentially provide inspections and things like that on. So we don't currently have a mechanism that would charge a fee for any reviews or any permits of that nature at this time.
Leo, are you open to questions as we're going on?
Yeah, anytime.
So on the sidewalk reimbursement, go over that. I didn't quite understand that. This is going to result in a more attractive program for the proposed changes for people that want to replace their sidewalks. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct. We establish a price in our standard specifications for a square yard or a square foot of concrete, and that price is what is used to establish how much someone can be reimbursed. So updating that price allows the reimbursement rates to be increased.
Thank you.
On that, Leo, okay, I heard that, and I may be wrong, they would pay for the material and we would do the installation, or is it just a flat, you get a bid for the sidewalk and we pay a portion of it and they pay the rest? Is that right, or?
There are times that we will do the installation. We do, if it's a very small section, you know, if it's just 2 or 3 panels of sidewalk, a lot of times it's cheaper for us to do that. And then it's more the scenario you described, where it's more billing on materials. Bigger projects, we traditionally have them bid out through a contractor. They pay the cost to the contractor, and then they're reimbursed based on the rates that are in this spec book. And like I
Okay.
said, the reimbursement, I think, is maximum of 50% the cost. But just with these rates the way they are now, we usually top out at about 30% that we can pay somebody back.
And then one more thing, I don't know what a longitudinal utility installation is.
That would be like a fiber optic company coming and installing all new cables within the right-of-way.
So typically boring?
Directional boring, most would be the
Okay.
bigger impact for us, yeah.
Okay.
Visionary is doing some of it right now for the city, kind of, to install the primary loop of fiber optic in town, but eventually that will probably spawn itself into laterals off of that loop that go to provide fiber to the home to a lot of people, so.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a reason why we do the reimbursement based on a set rate as opposed to a reimbursement of 50% of the cost?
Just so we have some control over what the contractors bid, you know, that a contractor doesn't charge someone, you know, on paper, double what it may cost to replace the sidewalk, so then we're reimbursing for the full amount.
Got it. And then my one other question is, with regard to the fees that folks are paying, is that essentially the cost that we believe that it would take us to replace the damage that they've done?
For which ones? I'm sorry, for the.
So for a street cut or
Oh.
for a sidewalk cut?
The permit fee is essentially the cost for about an hour of staff time to review the permit, make sure there's no issues or concerns. And then the other main fee is the inspection fees, and that's intended to cover the cost of, you know, labor, equipment, and a vehicle for a person to go out and physically do any inspections. Inspections are charged on a per each basis, so each time an inspection is needed, it's a set fee.
Okay, so folks are required to actually fix whatever they have cut?
Yes.
And then what they are paying for is just the fee to review the permit and to do the inspection? Got it?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Leo, I'd like to ask you to, not necessarily here tonight, but put on your thinking cap and maybe get back to us in some form or fashion on what a better sidewalk reimbursement program might look like. I mean, it seems to me ours has kind of been dysfunctional. I'm not sure the fees is going to fix the problem, if there's a problem. And if you know of something or there's some slicker way to do it, I think council would be really happy to hear about that.
We can certainly look into that. I don't believe that, it's none of that other than the prices here. It's just a policy we have, so I don't know that it's been looked at or updated since I've been here. May warrant a review.
I know that we have quite a bit of trouble getting folks to do the lateral ditch reimbursement program. Is the sidewalk reimbursement program typically fully drawn down every year, or do we have a similar challenge with getting folks to?
In the 2 years I've been here, I don't know that it's been fully drawn down, but I think it's been above half expended in the 2 years I've been here. I think prior to that, it was more usually fully expended.
Okay, thank you.
The second thing we wanted to touch on was a part of our specifications called the surface damage restoration fee. These are fees that are assessed if it is necessary to cut a new road. So if we, you know, as a city through 2A go out and invest $1 million in repairing a road, and the gas company has a leak and they have to come cut a hole in the brand new road after it's done, this is a additional fee that's charged to essentially, I don't say penalize, but, you know, take into account the depreciation on our newly invested asset in the street. So they're tools that work well with a lot of our other utilities to make sure they're being proactive ahead of our projects and looking for leaks and finding problems before we invest $1 million in a street. Something we've had very good success with, getting a lot of work done ahead of time to prevent these cuts on the back end. It is a little bit convoluted the way we charge it now, and we have some provisions in there that have not worked very well. For example, in certain situations, we will require them to mill and pave, I think it's 50 feet of road where they have to do a patch, and that just has not worked well in the times we've done it. They don't turn out nice. It's not giving us the benefit we want. So we want to take some of those things out that aren't working. But we would still like to see some sort of fee in place for this to try to continue to incentivize, utilities and that to take care of things before we make a major investment in a roadway.
And I'd like to relate a story to you. Right after we completed Main Street, not long afterwards, there was what's the name of the health
Valley-wide.
facility? Excuse me?
Valley-wide?
Valley-wide wanted to refurbish that old bank building. And to do it, the city made them install a water tap, if I remember correctly. And the issue was, to install the water tap, they're going to have to cut our brand-new pavement. And to me, the issue is that there really wasn't a requirement to install that water tap. There wasn't anything driving the water tap installation except city's regulations that they had to install it, even if they never used it. And so I would ask that if there's a place in these in this proceeding to think about that, what I think the appropriate thing there is that if a water tap is required, but it's going to require cutting relatively new pavement, that what we do is just establish a impound fee, or charge the fee for the installation, but not necessarily carry it through if it's not needed. In this case, it was not needed, and so that was kind of the rub. They were, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically Ted might, but I don't think it was driven by our requirements. I think it was a change in size of tap or combining of taps, but I don't remember specifically. Oh, fire line, thank you.
There was it was the previous engineer and the previous administrator that I was in discussions with over this, and there was some not very logical thinking going on, if I can put it that way. In other words, the rules said this, and by God, you had to do it, rather than saying, well, it's not really needed. If I remember, what I remember is that the installation wasn't needed, but the city was going to make them pay to do it.
Yeah. One of the things I forgot to mention
Which is okay, I'm sorry. Make them install the required tap. But so if what I'm suggesting is that there be some way for us to collect the fee for that, and then at the appropriate time in the future, if that ever comes up again.
Escrow, essentially, escrow fee. The other thing that I forgot to mention on the last slide, we do have provisions in the specifications that waive fees for our own projects. I don't know that I want to open that can of worms or place that burden on anybody, but it certainly could be something to consider if we as a city wanted the ability to waive fees in things that we deem to be of greater benefit to the city. I know that I think, allow some of that, if we have a development agreement, we can negotiate some of those things. That may be a possibility we want to consider. It would just be a matter of, is that a me decision? Is that a Ryan decision? Is that something that has to come before council and make a petition for that? But that's certainly something else that I've seen used in the past as well.
And in these discussions, the longitudinal fees, you may be aware that the county is going to be passing or implementing 1041 regulations, which is essentially a NEPA process. That's a National Environmental Policy Act. That means, Endangered Species Act evaluations, health and safety, environmental impact evaluations, all kinds of regulations come into play for that. That's in the unincorporated county. And there's going to be essentially two general areas that they do that in. One is for water projects, and the other is for utility scale, what they're calling utility scale projects. In other words, solar fields or battery storage, things like that. I think it would be well worth for the city to put some thinking in once the county gets those regulations, and I'm a utility company, all of a sudden I'm not looking anywhere in unincorporated Fremont County to do it. I'm going to be looking within a city limit somewhere to do it. And
Yeah.
so we might need to be thinking, some pre-thinking on that, how we want to handle that.
And maybe we should get a copy of what they have in draft, do you think, for staff to review?
It's,
I know that's
it's on the
not final.
website. It was at their
Okay.
last meeting.
Yeah, I know, I
Not,
watched it.
Not yesterday, but a week ago yesterday.
Right.
Where they conducted their public hearing.
Right, and then they said they had some more workshopping to do on the document,
Correct.
so.
Yeah, we are looking into that because we don't know what the effect that's going to have on the water district outside of the city limits.
Yeah.
Yes, and so that, exactly, that, that oftentimes there can be unintended consequences with, especially sweeping regulations like a 1041 authority is. Thank you.
The last real fee item that we have is the specifications have a provision for kind of reduced fees for larger developments. Think something like 4 Mile Ranch or the Abbey, if that were to come through, where it charges fees based on the number of lots in a certain division. So really, there was 2 options available in the old specification. One where a developer or a general contractor held all of the permits and did everything, and one where it could be divided out between subcontractors for different entities. We don't have great luck dividing them out. We'd like to eliminate that option and just have that be something that we work strictly with a developer or GC on. I don't know that it's been used at all in recent time. It's not something that comes up very often. It would likely only apply to a very few small instances in the city. Again, those fees haven't been touched in quite some time, so they'll be looked at again for escalations and things of that nature. This will be something that we kind of currently lack right now. We nowhere have it defined exactly what we want to see in a set of plans that is submitted to us for a new road project. So we did some work researching what El Paso County and Pueblo County call out and came up with a list of minimum requirements for a set of plans that's submitted to us, just so that is kind of a level playing field and gives a good expectation to everybody. We also took an opportunity to add requirements for as-bills. That's another item that we have language for as-bills, but again, it didn't really identify the specific things we want collected in an as-built. Not everything is utterly important for us to have in an as-built, so we're trying to narrow that down to the things that we can't go measure again. We want to know exactly where the pipes underground are,
Right,
but
exactly.
I don't necessarily need to know what the finished elevation of a sidewalk is, because I can go look at that myself at the end of a job, so. Material specifications. This is our specification book is quite thick. It's got a lot in it. We cite CDOT quite often, and we use a lot of CDOT specifications for things like concrete and asphalt and aggregate, which is the majority of the materials we use. But then our specifications also go into detail and add things to those, so that the producers that make concrete and asphalt have to come up with a special mix just for our projects and can't use a previously approved CDOT mix. We'd like to try to get away from that wherever we can. There isn't, that we've seen a huge benefit to having our own mix. It more complicates things than using the ones that are already approved, adds burden onto the producers, things like that. So we also, a lot of times, will recite the exact specifications that CDOT has, and I think we can simplify that and just reference, we want CDOT grade B concrete. I don't need to tell you exactly what that is. It can be looked up in the CDOT manual, so. Updated water main specifications. This is an effort that Travis had done as a part of the water master plan. So the biggest changes to the updated water main specifications were to expand the types of materials that we allow. We had a short list of like valves and curb boxes and things like that we would allow use of, and we tried to expand that so we can have better pricing and more opportunity where it's appropriate. Some things still need to be sole sourced, like we don't want a mismatch of fire hydrants in town that the fire department can't hook to or needs different hoses for, but you know, a valve is a valve essentially. As long as it opens and closes, doesn't fall apart, we should be good. Once a year,
Once a year for 50 years?
hopefully. We are proposing adding 2 new sections to our specifications. We don't currently have a specification for pavement markings. We do have signs and some other traffic items, but we don't have pavement markings. The specification will largely reference what is already approved by CDOT as materials, but will give a little more expectation of what materials we'll accept from CDOT. Keyhole excavation is something that kind of goes hand in hand with those longitudinal utility installations, especially when a contractor is boring long runs of utility. They have to excavate down everywhere they cross another utility to make sure that when they drill their line through, they don't run through a water main or a sewer main. A lot of times that involves cutting a hole in the pavement to go down and survey how deep that is. This allows them to essentially cut a, is it 6-inch diameter or 8-inch? 4-inch diameter hole in the pavement to go down, and then just specifies how they have to backfill that. So something that'll make it a little simpler for them to get what they need and make sure our stuff is all protected.
What was the second bullet on with regard to pavement markings? Does that relate to Sharrows and our almost new multimodal master plan?
It would include, Sharrows would be one of the markings that's specified. It's more about calling out the materials that are used in those installations and what materials we'll accept.
Okay.
Couple of things to consider, or things that we thought maybe were missing in the specifications. We don't have anything that really designates who makes the final decision if something's in question or if it's not clearly defined. I'd like to include something that designates the city engineer or myself as that person, and then puts the city administrator as a point of appeal. So at least we have a process in place where there's a question on something that's not clearly defined. We've got a mechanism that we can work through. Open to other ideas or suggestions on that, but it's come up a few times where either our plans or our specifications have a hole in them, or 2 things that conflict, and we have to make a decision of how to proceed, and just making sure we have a clear chain of command for that.
So when council gets parking complaints from the citizens, we could refer them to you as?
Absolutely. The other point that I'd like to discuss is these specifications are not required to be updated by council. We can certainly still do that if that's everyone's preference to be here. We could also consider an instance where we allow administrative updates for things that don't impact fees. So if we need to update a reference to CDOT or add a type of concrete that's not currently included, we can do that administratively. But if we wanted to change inspection fees, maybe we still bring that back to council. So I didn't know what everybody's flavor was on that or how involved we wanted to be. But like I said, a lot of it where we wait for 8 years to do things, if we were doing them administratively, we could kind of make a lot of those changes as we go and just have to keep publishing new updates to this. So.
Personally, I think that that makes a lot of sense and kind of strikes a nice balance between what does need to come to council with regard to fees and what could be done administratively by the Department of Public Works.
You're the experts on materials and how you do things, and so, but the dollar signs, sometimes, those are the ones that point at us sometimes.
Yes. I said, we're not opposed to either. It's just something we'd like to throw out as an option. I think, and Ryan maybe can correct me, are we working on like a master fee list for the city possibly? Because we could also potentially move the fees out of the spec book into sort of a master fee schedule for the city that kind of comes back all at once for council to review all the changes annually or biannually, whatever it may be.
I think that would probably be the best way to do it.
So we can work towards that too. I mean, for the red line purposes, when we bring something back, we'll have the fees in there so we can show the changes, but ideally that may be a better solution for a lot of these fees that seem to get missed and not looked at often.
From my perspective, council review is certainly warranted, but not necessarily, you have to come back to council to make the updates.
Okay.
So some periodic review would be really great.
Could I ask just on the previous slide, It says designate the city engineer. I think you had also mentioned, or possibly yourself. Could you talk through a little bit more kind of the option there and what you would recommend?
My title is DPW director, but I'm also technically the city engineer. So I guess the reason would be if you ever had different positions where you had a public works director and a separate city engineer, you may want them separate. I think that was the situation in the past at the city quite a while ago, honestly, but yeah. City engineer would probably be better. I think you'll always have someone designated as a city engineer. You may not always have someone that sits in a public works director seat.
Okay. And do we, in other places in the code, refer to either the engineer or the director of public works? I'm just thinking for consistency's sake.
There are, I think, in the UDC, there are sections that call the Director of Public Works, and I think we have some other areas that, other parts of the code that refer to the city engineer.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
There's a little bit of both. Aside from, those were what I would consider big changes. We'll obviously kind of go through all the minor changes as well. We've got a lot of dates to update. We reference specific iterations of the CDOT standard specifications. We'll have to update those to the current version, things like that. We need to renumber, reorganize. We still need to go through with the attorneys and just review the insurance and bonding limits and make sure those are still appropriate where we need them to be for CIRSA. Try to eliminate and consolidate some circular and duplicate references. And then we do still, in the specifications, require paper submittals for almost everything, although no one provides us paper submittals anymore. We'd like to switch all those to electronic, kind of get rid of those instances. And with that, those are the big things we wanted to talk through tonight. You know, we'll kind of take the direction we've had, what we've heard tonight, what we may hear from council or the public after this meeting, and kind of work on finalizing those. We do have some drafting work that we need to do as well to our standard specs, and we don't currently have a drafter on staff, so that part may lag a little bit. But we are hopeful to kind of bring back a final version for a February resolution and put this in place. And I said, we can post this on the website as well if anybody would like. I can have Christy put this slideshow up so everyone has a rough sense of what we're looking to change, and Maya and Ted contact info.
Is there these changes can affect pretty much anybody in the city, but are there groups that we could identify that these for sure would impact and probably need to be made aware of the process that's going on before we get to a final?
Yeah, certainly the utility companies would be one of the main ones, and then I would say our excavating companies. We have a handful that we work with pretty regularly that maybe don't work directly for the city, but that'll do sewer repairs or gas main repairs for residents when they need them. We can work through them, get their comments.
Do we have just one civil engineering firm in the city limits?
Yes.
Yeah. It might be wise to throw a copy on their desk too.
Yeah, we can certainly do some more targeted outreach to those groups as well.
Questions, comments from council?
I just think it all makes sense. There isn't anything that I think of that sounded like it didn't fit in with what we're trying to do more broadly, so I don't have a specific question.
No, it sounds like we're simplifying things, which is good. So I'm trying to.
So you did present us with a couple of questions, which is, should we go the administrative route, which I believe that we heard agreement on. So I think that my sense of council is that we're in favor of, like Jerry says, simplification and, updating fees. That can always be a controversial thing, but nonetheless, it's been a while since we've updated some of them, and for sure, we need to do some updating and have a better process going forward to where it can be a little bit more automatic, perhaps.
With regard to that, I know you mentioned on one of your first slides to make sure that they were relevant and reasonable, I think was the terminology. Are you planning to look at what neighboring municipalities and areas charge, or how are you planning to figure out what a reasonable fee update would be beyond the 40% CPI?
Yeah, that would be part of it. I think the other part of it would be just using our own asset management software. You know, how many hours does it take us to do the average inspection? What's the labor cost and markup for that person? You know, is that $50 an hour out the door kind of thing?
Got it, thanks.
Make sure you include a part in there for the allocation plan.
Yes.
I was
Cost
going to say that
allocation.
too. I had that very same thought.
No further comments, then I believe we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.